Thanks, Ludovic. So today I'm talking a bit of the beauty of DSL in Kotlin. I think most of you don't know what DSL are, but I will talk about it. So a few words about me. I'm Torben. I am a senior technical architect, and I started to work at NFQ Asia in the middle of the last year, so in July 2022. I live in Kiel, which is in the northern part of Germany, right at the Baltic Sea. So it's the echo again. Oh God. One of my passions is to write clean code and good-looking software. I don't know if all of you have really a technical background. So there is something, if you asked a programmer, where he or she will say, this is good code, and this is bad code. So what exactly is a DSL? So it's an abbreviation for domain-specific language. You can think of it as a niche language for a very specific business case. So we have two sorts of them. There could be either way an external DSL. So a language totally made up without using any beforehand logic or programming paradigms, or it can be an internal DSL, which is a language which lives inside an existing programming language. So it has a host language, it has all the features of the language, but adds additional features to it. So to be a bit more specific, I can show you some examples you hopefully know. For external DSLs, it's a bit more easier. We have, for example, CSS, which is a language which you can use to mark how a website should look like. Where are the things positioned? How are the colors? What fonts are being used? And so on. Additionally, HTML could also be seen as a DSL. You can define the structure of a document. Some of you maybe will know how the document will look like after looking at this code, but this is not a full-featured programming language. SQL, now we go more to the back-end part of everything, is also a domain-specific language. We can ask the database to return us something, or write something to it, update something, or whatever we want with it. Maybe a thing not all of you will know is plant UML. A language which will not create runnable code in the end, but will create images of UML diagrams. So you just say what you want to have, like a sequence diagram, and you will get a picture out of it. So in conjunction to this, we have internal DSLs. These are the ones which are living in other languages, and so we always have the language with them. So here, for example, I don't know who of you has still worked with jQuery, but you can say jQuery is a DSL. So you can update the DOM, query it, change several parts of it, but you have a really specific API which is readable and better maintainable than using the original API. Maybe more niche for the most of you, if you're not coming from Android or backend development, is the Gradle DSL, which is written in Kotlin. So with this, you can specify the dependencies of your application and how it should be built. And The thing I will do now quite resembles this DSL because it's also written in Kotlin. So before I talk about how you do it and why Kotlin is being great at it, I want to say, why do you need it? What are the benefits of using it? So for once, if you have a high complexity code, you want to hide it between a simple API. And the simple API will help you to make the code more readable and easier to change afterwards. So I guess if you're a developer, you know that sometimes after 2 weeks, you don't know what the code does. You're written at the end of the working day, right before going home. And the more readable the code is, the better it's for you, the better it's for other developers. Another thing is such a code is not only easily to understand, but it's also very expressive. So with a glance at the code, you can grasp the idea behind it without many knowledge of the language itself. And this particular feature allows a wider user base to use your language. For example, CSS, you don't need to know any programming, but there are many people who can use it to create beautiful websites. So I will show you the internal DSL you could create with Kotlin. But what makes Kotlin a good language to do it? So you want to omit as many clutter of your code. So if you ever programmed Java and tried to load a file like a few years ago, you had such a big piece of code which just loads the file, but for people who don't know what happens there, it just looks awful. So try to omit as many characters or boilerplate things as you can. Then allow for overriding operators. We don't know if we want to add some things, 2 different variables, we want to use the plus sign and not a .add method or something like this. And a language is really capable of creating DSLs if it offers you functionality to extend it without writing an add-on for the compiler. So I just give you one example in Kotlin. Here we have a simple list and we want to filter it. And in Kotlin, you don't have to specify the name of the variable. So if I want to filter something, and it's just, I look at the elements one after another, I can just say, hey, I want the element, I want it to be larger than 2. I don't have to write the name of the parameter, it's always it. If it's the last parameter of this filter function, I can just say, okay, I can move it out of these parentheses. So it's making it a bit more readable. So no closing parentheses after the lambda function. And so I don't have to guess where these 5 closing parentheses are coming from. And if the method only has 1 parameter, I can also remove the parentheses completely. So if you come from another programming language, this looks a lot like an if statement or something like this. So it looks a bit cleaner. when you have many arguments, here in this example there are two, one integer and one lambda function, you can have the same pattern where you just close the parentheses after all parameters except for the last one, which is the lambda function. An example, I don't know if anybody of you knows it, it's Apache POY. It's a library which can be used to create Excel, PowerPoint, and Word files. It's created by, it has been created by Apache or by the Apache Foundation, and so is open source and widely used because it's free, but it has a really complex API. So in my example, I created this Word document. It has a single page with a headline, a subline, and both of them are in different colors. So one is bigger, one is smaller, one is orange, and one is white. Then I added the table to it with a rough timeline of what we hear today at the Tech Talk. And then I colored everything in our nice NFQ blue. So what I want to show you here is the original code. So this is what, when you Google it, when you look at Stack Overflow, you will write to create this document. So this line, for example, sets the background color. You don't have to understand everything, but you see that it's not easily understandable. This code is used to add the first headline. This one to add the second one. Both in different colors, which we have to give in as strings. And then these 20 lines of code are all there to create the table. And we need to know how big it will be before. We need to set the width and center it. And then we need to set the white border. So it's much overhead in it. And the last part of the code handles the writing of the table. Here I had to refactor a bit because otherwise it wouldn't fit on one slide. So you have basically to get a row, to get a cell, to get the first paragraph, and then you are able to change the coloring and so on of it. So not really easy to use. My approach here would be this thing. So this is the Kotlin DSL for it. It's Kotlin code. It works in Kotlin, no special compiler involved. But I hope that it's better readable and understandable by everybody, even if you don't have a tech background. So I'm creating a Word document and stating how it should be saved, what the file name is. I'm saying I want to have a blue background color. And then I have my text. I start with, okay, there's NFQ Summit 2023. And then I say, okay, I want to add some formatting to it. And I can say, okay, orange color, bigger font size, and please align it center. I can omit everything of it. I could add, yes, please make it bold or something like it. Would all work. And the same with the second line, the subheadline in white. So other color, other size, centered as well. The table would look like this. I don't have to specify anymore how many rows and columns I will have, because the code will know for itself. I have to specify how to align it. I can give default formatting for all the rows with color and font size and all the other values. I specify how wide and in which color I want to have the border. And then I specify the width like before. And for the rows, for the real content, I can just say add a row. And inside the row, I add 2 columns to it, 2 text columns. So this would be the example on how to do it more readable, more maintainable. But there are some problems with it. They take time to create and maintain them. So you really have to be sure if you want to go into this hassle to create a DSL. It's important that you tinker with it, that it's really usable, and you don't create it for the sake of creating it. So if it's only used for a one-time job, don't do it. They are difficult to be documented. The code is really big, and you have many classes, methods, parameters, and so the documentation process with them is most likely in examples. So you write down how you would do it, how they can use it, but with looking at the code behind the DSL, it's not clear for everybody. And I think my last point, you have to plan them thoroughly. Do not add features to the DSL because you think you will need them one day. This will not help you, and this will make the DSL harder to maintain, and you get the same problem like before, but in the DSL instead of the code which is written afterwards. Okay, I think I rushed a bit, maybe. But are there any questions?
Would you favor a fluent design over a DSL, or would you say use a DSL rather than the fluent design?
I like this nesting of the DSL really much, so that you really see the structure, how all the parts are fitting together in a hierarchy. If it's not hierarchical, maybe you shouldn't use it. And if the hierarchy goes too deep, it's not that usable as well. It looks like the JavaScript callback hell, where you have a callback and a callback and a callback, so your screen just goes wider and wider. So it depends a bit, but I'd like DSL a bit more. Other question? Why is it great? Because it's better maintainable. Have you had a look at the words here, the generation of the word file? Is this readable for you? How about this one? Good. That's the part where you need it. You need other people who are not experienced developers to understand it, and in best case, maybe write it, even if they don't have an IT background. So creating the DSL, maybe, yeah, but using it, you could say low code, yeah, but it's really, you could include it in a low code application as a replacement for a programming language in it.
I want to ask thing because I had some time to try to apply the DSL. First of all, okay, you have a simple Excel file. But in my case, sometimes I want to put some really hard feature into Excel file. For example, inline function inside. And at that time, DSL don't have the feature. And we need to go back to the original solution. It means the low cost. And the situation almost happened at the last minute. It means maybe we apply DSL for some case. And one day we found that DSL function is not enough for our refinement. And we need to find out the other solution. And we realize that just the original solution serve for the requirement. So do you have any suggestion for us at the beginning when we should use the library like this? Or
Can you rephrase the last sentence? Sorry.
Let's say that the DSL is higher level of score, but it's like some feature. For example, we just allow to setting the color, the font size, but we don't allow to merging the cell, for example. And I had applied for some Excel file, and the net is not good enough, and we need to find the new solution. So at that way, should we continue with DSL or cancel that solution and back to the low cost option?
So the good thing about these internal DSLs is you have the full feature set of the language, and in this code, I could just use the Java code at every point. So if I wanted to have some feature which is in Java and is not in the DSL, I could just use the Java code in it and decide if it's feasible to move this feature to the DSL as well, because it's frequently used. So it depends a bit. So you should always extend it if there is a good reason to do it, a good feature which makes sense in other cases, but don't overcomplicate it if it's only a one-time thing. You should always have the possibility in the DSL to get to the real object, to the real API, and use it in these cases. Did this answer your question?
Yep, but sometimes it's not happen. When we're using the DSL, we don't have a chance to back to use the raw language. It means the original, so that in Java.
Yeah, okay. So then it's really important that it's there at the start. And the team should only accept such DSLs when they have full control over it and can maintain it. And if the team doesn't like the DSL and doesn't see the benefit in it, you shouldn't use it, because the programmers are using it in the end. And it should make their life better. And if it's making it worse, it doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you very much, Torben.